and she was angry and didn't have her drugs and whatever and threw him out, and he never found his way back home and has been homeless. He's 22 today, and he's been homeless ever since. A lot of these kids have aged out of foster care or wandered out of foster care or just kind of been lost, you know, kind of gone between a mom's house and a dad's house, and nobody really knew where they were and nobody really cared, and both parents have kind of gone their own way. She's got her new beau and he's got his new, and they, you know, the kid is just kind of collateral damage from the previous relationship. And so very often they kind of wander away and nobody ever goes looking for them. They're just, again, collateral damage, you know, from a bad decision. So that's a huge percentage of the population of homeless people that my staff and I are seeing in Conejo Valley are kids that grew up in foster care. Most of those have not finished high school, because if you don't have a parent who cares, or a good foster parent who cares, or you're not in a good quality group home where someone helps you with your homework and, you know, sets boundaries and standards and good habits for you, it just doesn't happen. And so a lot of these kids have not graduated from high school. They have never learned to drive a car because they didn't have a parent to teach them. They don't know how to read a good book because nobody ever taught them, and they dropped out of school too early. They can't write a resume because they wouldn't know how to read the resume. And so employing them, as you can imagine, is really, really difficult, really difficult. The other problem with kids who've aged out of foster care is just the effects of trauma, the long-term, lingering effects of trauma, emotional trauma. And I think that's why a lot of our population ends up using drugs and alcohol, because they need to self-medicate. The loneliness, the sense of abandonment, loving parents as a small child and not being loved in return, not being wanted or waited for, not having a parent stay up late at night and worry about where you are and your safety. Just that sense that you really are alone in the world, that it's your birthday and you're eating your meal out of the trash can. The trauma that imposes on kids is, for some of them, really lifelong. So that's a lot of what we see in Conejo Valley. I'm going to stop right there because I want to make sure, I've got a lot of information, but I want to make sure that the information I have matches the questions that you have. So I'd like to know some of the questions you have, some of what drew you here tonight. What are some of the things you'd like to know about our homeless population, or services that we have, or things like that? Anybody? Oh. Yeah, go ahead.
When there are older people who don't have anybody, where can they go to sign up for Section 8 housing? Where can they go for assistance?
That's the kind of stuff that we will help the elderly with. You heard the question was elderly people. If they need to sign up for Section 8 housing, that's the kind of case management that Lutheran Services provides. When we get a client like that, we spend time with them. We'll help them with their Section 8 application. We'll help them get those things in. We can help them with their Social Security paperwork. A lot of people have never been to the Social Security office and don't know how to navigate those kinds of systems. I'm amazed at how many people need help navigating life systems now, you know. First of all, a lot of things are digital. And if you are living in poverty, you don't have a computer. And so you're not digitally or technically literate. And so it makes life really hard. So we do help with a lot of those kinds of things. And the elderly and families with children are always our top priority. I mean, we try to treat everyone with respect and dignity, but we give priority to those who are elderly and to moms with children. Yeah.
How long will it take once you get an older person and they get that paperwork in? How many months, years do they wait for housing?
Yeah. Section 8 housing is a years-long process. But sometimes, between many mansions and some of our Section 8 housing and the Housing Authority, I think we have a really good housing authority here in Ventura County. Certainly our Conejo Valley office is extraordinary and it's run well, and And they're very approachable people, so I would have no problem calling and saying, you know, this is a crisis situation. This is an elderly woman. She can't care for herself. Senior Concerns is also a nonprofit that's in our building. We live in the Community Conscience Building on Hillcrest, where there are 12 other nonprofits besides LSS. So the entire building is dedicated to nonprofits, and in our office building is Senior Concerns, and they're extremely helpful to us with that.
Is that the one where the bowling alley used to be?
No, no. We are near the corner of Moore Park Road on Hillcrest, behind the gas station.
Moore Park?
Yeah. I'm not aware of a bowling alley there, but
Moore Park Road.
we're on Hillcrest. Do you know where Office Depot is?
Yes.
Well, we're right across the street.
Okay.
We look at the side of Office Depot. Hi.
Yeah, my question is whether you have any suggestions of ways that someone could try and help.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Some suggestions of ways that a person might be able to help the homeless problem in the county.
Well, we're always looking for volunteers. Every day we're looking for volunteers. We actually right now have a few case managers. It's the one thing that we are always backlogged on, every staff member. But what's wonderful is that we have a couple of volunteers that are as good as any of my staff. And, you know, they set appointments and they meet with people and they help people. We just got a new volunteer. He's a retired FBI agent. So he's really good when he's meeting a new client and finding out where they've been and what they've been doing and what they need. So that's one thing that you can do is volunteer. We need people to help us answer the phones, because otherwise I have to take staff away from helping the homeless to answer the phones and greet people and all those kinds of things. We have a couple of days of the week that we don't have enough lunches. One of the things that brings the homeless to our office is that we give lunches every day and that they get the meal that you serve on Tuesdays. We have that 365 days a year. So we need volunteers. And then the other thing too that's important is leading them to us. You know, some of these young kids, some of the elderly people have no idea where to go, absolutely no idea where to go. And so leading them to us, telling them how to get to us, and you know, somebody there can help you, as opposed to just giving them money because we feel guilty. So those are some of the immediate things that I think of, but I'm sure I'll have other ideas. Anybody else?
We come from a small church over in Malibu on the other side of the hills, the Methodist church out there above Zuma Beach by the high school, and you know, we have volunteers that show up, but we started a program, our pastor and some of the women in the church, 3 years ago, just a community dinner on Wednesday nights, and we'd have 4 or 5 homeless people. The amount of homeless that live on Zuma Beach and in the dunes and in the pouring rain, and people in their 60s that are out there freezing. So, and then it became 8 or 10, and then 12 or 15, and then 20, and we finally, each Wednesday, we'd have 70 or 80
Wow.
homeless people coming for dinner.
Wonderful.
And there was a whole group of women that would spend all day Tuesday cooking these big meals and soups and really good food, and then they would show up. And they were giving out sleeping bags for people that needed them. A group of us got called in by the mayor and the mayor pro tem, and were told, we've become a magnet for the homeless. They're taking the buses out from Santa Monica. They were carpooling over from the valley to come for these meals. And there was another group at the church feeding people Thursday night. So it was a Wednesday, Thursday, and we started getting blamed for any crimes that homeless might commit, even if they were people that had never even come to our dinners. So we were told, make Thanksgiving the last one, and we were asked, make Thanksgiving your last one and stop.
Wow.
And so we stopped, but the homeless kept coming, and so now every Wednesday, the women still cook on Tuesday, and we just carpool it across to Zuma Beach and set up in the parking lot with tables, and we just did it this Wednesday. We had about 30, 35 people came. So it's not the numbers from before, but there's still some taking the buses. Some are desperately needing a housing. Some are just, like you said, down on their luck. Some have real serious issues.
Absolutely. I believe all of that.
You know, one of them, this lady that can't walk, and she has a walker, and she sleeps right on the edge of Pacific Coast Highway. And I saw her yesterday when I was coming to work at 7 o'clock, changing her clothes right on the edge of the highway, and she can't move, but she won't allow anybody to really help her. She refused. We tried to give her a sleeping bag. She refused it. She just sleeps on the cement with a little blanket, and so there's some that won't help, but there are others that, you know,
Yeah.
to make the meals. The markets out there are donating sandwiches and
That's
things that would then they take those for the next day's meal, and just to get one hot meal a week for these people means a lot to them. And we're still getting some. We had one for the first time last week that he sleeps under the Santa Monica Pier, and he said, "We heard you had good food," and he took the bus all the way out to us, and he ate 4 big plate loads of food and said, "I'm stoking up," and then went back to sleep under the Santa Monica Pier. So it's a huge range, but there's a lot of people that need the help, and we really appreciate everything that you guys do.
There's a pastor in Malibu that's been contacting us. It may be the gentleman you're working with. I don't know.
It's a woman pastor. We have Sandy Liddell.
No, this is a gentleman, and he wants to talk. I don't remember, but we'll talk afterward because, yeah, he is. But, you know, welcome to my world. There are people in Conejo Valley that think that we are, you know, martyrs or saints, or we're going to be canonized. There are other people that think we're the cause of the homelessness, right? Yeah, of course. Yes. Yeah. And you know, my question, just as a citizen, just as the mother of 4 grown kids, we do have a small contingency in Conejo Valley. In fact, I think I heard that they're going to the city council meeting this coming week, to protest any kind of services to the homeless, any kind of talk of permanent shelter, anything like that. And, you know, I try to be quiet, but I think to myself, could you imagine raising your own children in a society that just says, how do we get them out of here, right? I mean, you've got this amazing opportunity to teach your children kindness. And having worked with teenagers for over 30 years, I've learned that if we don't teach it to our kids, nobody else does. They're not going to learn it from someone else. It's embedded in them. It's ingrained in them by what they've seen at home and how we treat those who are the least and the weakest. Yes.
I went years ago when Rick was looking at the fire station on Hillcrest that was too small and going to be abandoned, and it was too small to meet any needs. So this new group is all upset because they've targeted the next fire station that will be closing across from Trader Joe's on Arbalace and Moore Park. And it is a neighborhood, and there are schools in the area. And that's, so we have been asked to show up at City Council on Tuesday in support of homeless programs and issues. But those NIMBYs, the Not in My Backyard, are going to show up in bigger numbers than we, because that's the night we feed the free meal, and there are 30 of us doing that.
Right.
You know, so I need everybody who's not doing the free meal to go to City Council at 6, and you don't have to speak. You can just fill out a comment card, and that gets added to the yes, we need homeless services pile.
Yes.
Because our City Council is really seriously, for the first time, trying to come to grips. And I participated in the homeless count, and I was delighted to see Claudia de la Peña walk in.
Wasn't that wonderful?
So we had a city council member actually go out this year for the first time to see.
And what they decided last week at the city council meeting was that they are going to, and this was Claudia who made the motion, they've created a small committee, I think there's only going to be 2 council members on it, to research the homeless issue. And I mean, how wonderful is that? We welcome any kind of research that the city wants to do about homelessness, because that's when they're going to make a wise and informed decision. Yes? It's Tuesday night at City Hall. And I believe they're at 6.
They're in the Share Forum Theater. If you know where the small theater is, it's in the Share Forum Theater. And they meet early, 6 o'clock.
Yes.
So you can turn a card in, though you don't have to speak.
Well, and my question to the people that, I will say that 3 years ago when I took over at Lutheran Social Services, the police were saying to me, if you feed them, they will come. And I started to say, you know, I listened and I said, I understand that, but they're somebody's kids. I mean, are you suggesting that they wouldn't be living if we weren't feeding them? Are we trying to starve them out? But I'll tell you, a wonderful thing happened with our police department in Thousand Oaks, our Ventura County Sheriffs. We began to tell them the stories of these clients. We began to tell them how, you know, how George got where he is, how John got where he is. And that's something police officers don't, and city council members don't often have the opportunity to see. So when they begin to hear the stories of how people got here, they begin to have a heart for, they're not just a derelict, they're not just a drug addict that doesn't want to get a job. They're not just a bunch of lazy bums that want to sit on the cold sidewalk in the pouring rain. Yes? Ventura County Sheriff takes over the entire county of Ventura. And the cities, I believe, the Sheriff's Department is contracted with each city that they serve. So Thousand Oaks Police are technically Ventura County Sheriffs. Tim Hagel is our police chief, but he is a Ventura County Sheriff's commander.
It's working.
Is there, are there any of them involved in community policing initiatives?
Yes.
To your knowledge?
So we actually, in Thousand Oaks, we're very fortunate. I'm working with the second one. I think 2 years ago, we got the first gentleman, and he kind of built the program. We actually have our own vulnerable populations police officer. And so I work very closely with him. We talk often during the week. They can ask us for help with different clients, or sometimes they'll meet a stranger and they'll send me a picture and say, do we know this person? And we can say yes, and they're one of ours, or no, they're not. The police and we have a database of our local, in Thousand Oaks and Newbury Park, we have 257 identified homeless people whose names we know and who know us. And we deal with them. They come to the meals. They come by each day to get their lunches. They come early in the morning and get their coffee and a Danish that Panera Bread donated. And then we have, like the police were part of the homeless count. So yeah, he had a whole contingency of police officers that were out with him this year doing the homeless count.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I work with the Coalition for Family Harmony under
okay.
a very similar underserved populations grant.
Excellent.
And also assisted with the homeless count because last year they were unable to identify transgender individuals who were homeless. They just didn't capture that data enough to be able to provide these services. I was shocked too when I read the report, and so I know my friend Johnny here has his perspective in Oxnard, but I mean we really are talking about a population that doesn't want to be found, but it makes it hard to provide the services that I provide.
Yeah.
If we can't.
Yeah.
Connect.
There is a problem, clearly, with the homeless count. If you don't want to be counted, I mean, we are not investigators. I mean, if you want to hide on that day, I probably won't find you. And many homeless people do not trust the government. They are afraid that their data will be shared. And for what reasons, I don't know, and it's not really my business. But if they come into our office on that day, because our office is closed on a Thursday, the staff are all there, but there's no clients there on Thursday, giving the staff a chance to catch up on paperwork and things. Because of that, the homeless count fell on a day when an agency is closed, we were allowed to count the entire next day. So we counted the homeless who came to our shelter Wednesday night at Westminster Presbyterian, and then we counted every client that came all day Friday and Friday night at our shelter again. So if they hadn't been counted once already, we counted them.
So we might be able to just
Right.
keep it
But
to you.
But there are people that know, they read the paper, and they know it's the California State homeless count, and they go to the library for the day and, put their head in a book, and they intend not to be counted. And there's nothing we can do about that. They have a right to do that. Yes?
Going back to the city council, there's a chance that Claudia De La Pena may not be running for re-election. And so there's going to be some, the election is in November, and there's going to be some upcoming candidate forums happening here and at the Democratic Club and other places around town. So we'll email you if you're on the mailing list when there's going to be one here, but keep your eyes open in the newspapers and see who's running and ask them questions about what they think about helping the homeless, and let's get some people on the city council that will help.
I appreciate that. That's where it all begins, right? We can't complain about the decisions that the powers that be make if we're not a part of putting them in those positions of power.
That's right. The Democratic Club of the Conejo Valley, if you're not familiar with it, will be working very hard to promote candidates that will be helpful.
Yes?
Getting back to that point in time survey, I wonder how accurate that information is. You mentioned that the city council had put 2 members to research the homelessness problem. Do we currently have any other measures other than that point in time count? Because really that is a snapshot. That's not longitudinal data that we can really do much with.
Right. So some cities, like Los Angeles or Oxnard, some cities whose populations are clearly underserved, have a city person who is paid to do social services. Thousand Oaks is certainly economically not one of those, at least on the surface, right? The data does not reflect that we have an underserved population. And for that reason, the city of Thousand Oaks does not provide social services. Not at this point in time, they don't. So what's going to have to happen is, I'm assuming, that small committee of city council members will be reaching out to those of us who are, boots on the ground and gathering information and data from us. They're going to want to see the homeless count. They're going to, want to talk to the county social service people. They're going to want to talk to those of us in the trenches in Conejo Valley. But at the moment, it is not the city's job to provide social services. They do provide grants to us to make our work possible, but it has never been, until this point, it's never been a city whose population requires social services.
So then at this point, would we have a way to tap into the numbers of, say, students at Cal Lutheran or at Moore Park College or at Cal State Channel Islands who may be going to school and are homeless and are just kind of rotating from place to place, a night in the shelter here or that shelter there?
Are you talking about homeless college students?
Right.
Yes.
Right, so that we would extend beyond just the homeless that you would typically identify off the top of your head as homeless, right? There's a definite homeless population of individuals that don't present
Correct.
in the way that we would think.
Yes.
There may be families who are displaced as a result of a fire who are now living in a parking lot,
Correct.
in a trailer, right? So the
Right.
fires have really, I think, confounded the information that we have.
I currently see 3 college students, one from Moore Park, one from Channel Islands, and one from Cal Lutheran, who are homeless. And what I tell them every time I see them or help them with some situation that they have, what I always tell them is go back and tell other kids in your situation that we're here And certainly we want to help kids who are going to school and trying to better themselves and get that education and all of that. And we're here to do that. So each time I see them, I ask them to report back. I don't know that there are groups of them, or if that's not something kids are ashamed of and keep to themselves. So that may be why there's not large numbers of them. I know they're out there, but we're not serving them at the moment because they don't come to the homeless dinner, they don't get counted in the homeless count, and they don't present as your typical homeless people. But we have a large number of kids going to college locally that are living in their cars or couch surfing in friends' apartments, yeah, who have no place of residence.
What about undocumented homeless?
What about the undocumented?
Are they identifying, are they seeking out services?
Yeah, the wonderful thing about our grants, I don't have a single grant, state, county, state, or HUD grant that requires me or even allows me to ask about a person's immigration status. Not my business. So not only do we tell our clients, you know, you don't need to worry about that, we tell them if anybody asks you, you come see me, you come get me, because that we're not allowed to do that. So where you come from and when you got here and how you got here and where your papers are, we don't ever ask for. The one thing we require is a photo ID. I can't have someone coming in claiming to be someone else. It also helps us identify. We're trying not to serve people from Oxnard or Ventura, because the east end of the county has the bulk of the services. We're the only game in town here. So I can't take on people from LA or other areas. So we do want to see their ID and make sure that they belong to us, that they're from our area, and that they're not just transient, you know, on a vacation going from, you know, San Francisco to San Diego. We don't serve people under those circumstances, but we don't care what the ID is from. I don't care if we see IDs from Mexico quite frequently. That's an ID. If it looks like you and it has your name, we're good with that. Yes?
What do you do for like your foster kids you were talking about that won't have a driver's license, won't have a college ID card?
We have a voucher that the state of California gives. We have 2 vouchers, actually. If you are living in poverty but you are housed, I can give you a voucher that I sign that'll give you an ID for $8. And sometimes we'll pay that $8. But if you're legitimately homeless, I can give you a free voucher. And if I sign that, you get your identification for free. The other thing we do for kids who've been raised in foster care, some of them have no idea where their birth certificate is, have never seen it, no one's ever given it to them, and maybe no one's ever sent for it. So we do that. It usually costs, depending on the state, it costs about $37 to $45. And so we'll go online, and as that youth is giving us information, we go online and we'll order that certificate and we'll pay for it, and it comes back to us. And so we let them know as soon as we get that in the mail that their ID, that their birth certificate is here. Now I can help them get an ID.
Hi. So my name is Juan. Someone was mentioning undocumented homeless. So I have a lot of stories and a lot of different experiences, but just from ones that went through my mind with that, I know a lot of people who do work like in the fields and who are undocumented, and I've met many who are homeless. And despite Oxnard being declared a sanctuary city, not everyone in that population knows that because of lack of access to information, or they don't have access to like a news outlet. And at the same time, there's this high fear of being approached and being deported. And so I remember like many of the people I would interact with who only spoke Spanish, they would like sleep either in a open air truck, like either out in the fields or in some kind of tube next to a train tracks, like in Oxnard off 5th Street. And many also are very vulnerable to like STD infections, or HIV.
Absolutely.
In the Spanish-speaking communities, especially because there's not really that much information that's being provided with regards to like HIV prevention or advocacy.
Yeah.
And so they're a very vulnerable community. A lot of people believe in the pull-out method.
Yeah.
And
As though that's going to work.
and so recently I've had people reach out to me who are also undocumented, and they were asking me how could they get on medication that I take, like Truvada or PrEP, which is an HIV preventative, and it's like 92 to 99% effective. And when you're on that medication, you are obliged to get tested for other STDs. And so I found out there is a way for them to get on the medication, which would be very beneficial, because you'll have this screening of unscreened population to be more conscious about safe sex, but also just helping reduce the spread of infectious diseases.
Yeah. You guys have community action out there, right, in Oxnard, and you've got a couple of agencies that are out there. I know we've got people in our office that speak Spanish because we want the identical information that's being given to people in English to be given in Spanish. And I would like to think that in Oxnard that everybody's doing that, but that might be an important, that might be an important question for you to be going around asking, and it might be a worthy thing to volunteer for to help translate.
The other thing is that what I found when I would volunteer for in California, they passed this thing where people who are undocumented could get their driver's license.
Yes.
I would volunteer on helping people study for the exam, and so I would read through them the test questions and then the answers, and then I would then hand them the paper and ask them to just go through it, and then I'll check to see how you do. And what I ended up finding out is that not everyone in this population is literate, and then you also have people in the population that don't even speak English or Spanish.
Yes, that's actually true across the board of homeless. I was helping a gentleman not very long ago with a resume. I was writing his very first resume at 60 years old. I was asking him where he worked and what he did, and we were going back to when he was 20, so we're trying to build 40 years of a resume. And at some point I kind of thought, okay, I feel like I'm working a little harder than he is on him, right? Which is our number one rule. You can't work harder than them. You can't want it more than they want it. And it turned out he couldn't read. Yeah, so that's across if you've been abandoned or neglected or any of the things that plague my clients, it's pretty likely your academics and all of your development will have been ignored and is going to it's going to be a huge shortfall. So that's true across the population. Anybody else? Randall, go
I'm
ahead.
going to switch gears here a little bit. Are you aware or involved or have suggestions for us in a larger sense in preventing homelessness in terms of affordable housing?
Yeah, it's a huge problem, as though you don't know, in the state of California. It's particularly a difficult issue in Ventura County. Most people, I read an article the other day, most people, it was an economic study, most people living in our area of middle age or above could not afford to buy the home they're living in today, right? Most of us could not afford to buy the home we're living in if we had to buy it today. And so thinking of people moving here or trying to work their way out of poverty, I understand why people who are impoverished want to be here. This is a great place to raise children. It's a great place for kids to grow up. It's a wonderful place to worship. We have the most amazing interfaith community here of any place I've ever heard of. It's extraordinary what this community is capable of. So I get why people want to be here, but it doesn't make it any more affordable. So I don't have a lot of, I'm a very optimistic person. I think we're gonna get more affordable housing, but I don't ever see this area being affordable for my neediest people. And that's heartbreaking. But I keep trying to direct them to places that might be more affordable. It's very, very difficult. And I'll tell you another thing that makes it difficult and why things like city council and elections are important. We actually have people that didn't even want a seniors building. Many Mansions was going to build a seniors complex for low-income seniors, and nobody wanted it in their backyard. So they actually shut down the project. So you're not talking about immigrants, you're not talking about a recovery place for drug and alcohol, you're talking about elderly, tax-paying citizens, many of whom have worked on some level all of their life. But because they're poor, I don't want them living in my neighborhood. So that kind of thing is alive and well. Thankfully, I don't have to hear a lot of it, I think, because people sort of know where we stand. But I do know that it's out there, and I hear that it's said about us. I also hear that people say if it wasn't for Lutheran Social Services feeding these people, they would have to find someplace else to be. So I understand all that, but we're going to continue to do what we do, because while they're here, they're entitled to their dignity and a hot meal and a hot shower. At our place, if you don't know, clients can come and they can take a shower. They have to schedule it. We have daily schedules of showers. They get 20 minutes in the bathroom. It's not 20 minutes in a shower. I've heard some dads say, what? That's a lot of wasted water. Okay? We were never allowed a 20-minute shower growing up, but they're allowed 20 minutes in the bathroom with the door locked, where they can shave and they can dress and they can shower, you know, they can blow dry their hair or do what they need to do. They get 20 minutes in the bathroom. And at 20 minutes, we need that door open and we need the next person walking in with their towel. And we do that right up until we close at 4:30. And then they also make appointments for showers. So Light Shine Church is spending this Lent collecting from their congregants to buy us a new washer, because our washer died a few months ago. And in the meantime, it's just hobbling along. And so hopefully by Easter, they'll be delivering a new washer for us. But we have laundry going all day long, all day long. People make appointments, they throw their laundry in, they throw it in the dryer, they fold it. And then we wash all their towels and washcloths from their shower. We do a load at lunchtime when we're closed, and then we do a load at the end of the day, and in the morning we throw those in the dryer, and like most of our households. So they also ideally get a lunch, a sack lunch at lunchtime, and then they all start making their way out of our area around 4:30 when we're closing, because they're going to start walking to the meal, wherever that's going to be, or taking the bus, or riding bikes, or hitching a ride with one of the few that has a car. So those are the services we provide. I will say that the most important thing we offer is case management, because it is the one thing that can change the direction of their life. You know, if I feed them today, just like our kids, they're hungry again when the next meal comes around, right? But if I can case manage people, and most important thing is to be able to hear their story, and there's so much abuse. So many of our young people have been sexually abused. I have met kids who are homeless who have been traded for drugs, offered up, prostituted by their parents for drugs. If I can't have sex with this drug addict because I'm too out of it, you can have my 15-year-old daughter, but I need the drugs in return. I've had kids that have been sold, traded, ignored, lost, deliberately lost. So listening to their story is the most important thing we do. I always begin with a brand new kid by saying, how did you get here? And sometimes it's the very first time they've ever told their story. So we always keep Kleenex handy. But case management is the one thing that seems to make a difference. You know, that somebody's taking notes and following up again next week and asking you, how did that go? And did you go on that interview? And hey, this week we're going to work on your resume, and let's talk more about that. Anybody else? Yes? Unfortunately, the free clinic that is next door to me They are amazing. And now they've started a dental clinic. But they only serve housed people. So my clients have to go, either they get Medi-Cal and they go over to the Medi-Cal building in the old Borders. Remember the old Borders building? Well, that now is mental health, and it's also their community health offices where they can get Medi-Cal. But they also go to Westminster Free Clinic. So that's been a lifesaver to a lot of our homeless people. But our housed people can go to the free clinic, they can get health care, they can get dental care now. And every Tuesday night, pro bono attorneys come, and homeless can get that, housed can get that, any age group. And what the attorneys do is they trade off. The first Tuesday of every month might be family law, then the next one is immigration law, the third one is criminal law. So they provide a wide range, and there's some amazing attorneys. We've had some moms who have been so wronged in a divorce that some of these attorneys have just really been able to turn things around for them. So, yes.
What kinds of things have you noticed in terms of similarities to trends that we might see in the west end of the county, or even within the state or nationally?
What kind of trends am I seeing? I think the number of homeless people is growing significantly. And a lot of people think like, you know, that maybe because agencies like us or volunteers like you are feeding them, that it's growing the population. Well, that's not how it works. People are growing into homelessness because they missed a payment on their rent, or a mom had to choose between getting her transmission done so she can get to work, which is how she pays her rent, and get her kids to school so that social services doesn't come knocking on the door, or she's either going to pay her rent or take care of the car. So 2 months like that, and they're homeless in a car. We very often are helping women with rental assistance when they have got their pay or quit notice, their 3-day pay or quit notice. So very often that's when somebody who we're not normally used to seeing will say, listen, by Friday, my kids and I are gonna be in the car, you know. So we're just seeing more and more of that, and I think that's why some of our homeless numbers are growing. Let's be honest, unskilled people are making $10 an hour, many of them. Many of my clients are making $10 an hour. And granted, they're unskilled, so, you know, a lot of people think that that's just. But to live in the Conejo Valley, it's not doable. It is just not doable. You cannot, it's not affordable. It's not sustainable. So we also try to help counsel people about that, you know. You may want to rent here in this community for your children, but at $2,800 a month, when you're making $11 an hour, it's never gonna work. Not on any planet is that ever gonna work. But then then they ask, well, where do we go, you know? Am I destined to raise my children in the poorest, most underserved communities around us? And that's the tragedy in it all, and that's why we need more affordable housing. But yes?
What is the track record in terms of rehousing people? Do you have statistics on that?
I don't have statistics on that, but we do have a grant right now. Oh,
I'm just curious about success rate and actually getting people back into housing, and if there's statistics kept about that.
yeah. I don't have any current statistics, but 1 year from now I will, because we got a wonderful federal grant, and we're praying that in July we'll get it again. And what that grant, it's called the Rapid Rehousing Grant. And what that does is it puts a family or a person, and we have really tried to, it's up to each agency who receives that funding to determine what your criteria is. So we said, first and foremost are moms with children. We want every children in our area to be housed. We want them, we've got a number of kids in Conejo Valley schools, and we partner with them a lot, but we've got a number of kids who are sleeping in a car at night, and parents are stopping at a gas station in the morning, kids get cleaned up in the restroom, and get dropped off at school. So what we're trying to do is do women and children and the elderly. And we have so far housed 35 individuals or families since July. Yeah, so a year from now, I'll be able to tell you how sustainable that was. What the grant gives us is enough money to give you your first month's rent and a deposit. And if the need is great enough, I can actually pay 3 months of your rent. It just takes funding away from another, it means you're going to serve less people. But it's been an extraordinary opportunity for us to really, it's real money putting people in real housing. So we're 35 and we're thrilled about that, yes. Oh, sorry, yes.
Where else do you get your money? Do you get your money from Thousand Oaks?
We get our money from donations, yes. Most of our money comes from donations, yeah. And so things are always tight. We get a grant from the City of Thousand Oaks. We get a CDBG grant. It's called the Community, the Community Block Grant. Yes, thank you. And what that does is it actually, in my office, it pays for one staff member.
I'd like to ask, in the absence of you being able to get people into long-term housing, that on that little card, you have the 7 different churches.
Yes.
Each one for each day of the week. That means that a homeless family would have to go to a different part of Thousand Oaks every day of the week in order to get the meal and the shelter. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So on Saturday night, they are up here in Newbury Park at St. Julie's on Borchard Road. On Sunday, they're at Temple Adat Elohim down the street from me on Hillcrest. So that's a good, I want to say it's 9 miles because I've clocked each one. And it is. It's if you've got a car, it's no big deal, But we've got some elderly men riding bikes. We've got families that are walking. We've got some elderly that are walking, and they start out early in the day. We do buy bus passes, but we run out of them very quickly. Yeah, so it is, don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for the meals because our people are fed 7 nights a week. And during this cold winter, they are sleeping on a warm blanket in a warm church building. They have to be out by 7, and they always tell me how cold it is at 7 a.m. But at least they were warm in the night, right? So I'm not belittling any of that. I do grieve, though, that there's such distance between each place. Yes.
Just a follow-up question to, you were able to get 35 individuals into housing.
Yes. So far, we're not done yet either.
So far. So how are they able to afford rent after that?
They have to be working. You don't qualify if you're not working. And part of that housing counseling is, how sustainable is this for you? So we're going to help you for these months, and hopefully what they're doing is saving money then for when they're on their own. But we won't put them in a housing situation that we don't think is sustainable. We will not do that, because that's just sending good money after bad. I wouldn't be a good steward of the country's money, the federal funds. I wouldn't be a good steward of that if we did that. So what we do is we put them to work. I'm not a realtor, and I don't have time to find housing, so we have them looking. They're on Craigslist, they're reading the paper, they're looking around, they're going in laundromats, seeing who's looking for roommates, and they're finding the housing. And then they come to us and we do all the paperwork, we inspect the place, we write up the lease, and we've been very successful so far. God is good, yes.
So Simi Valley had identified in their human trafficking awareness event.
Simi Valley?
Simi Valley.
Yes.
That they didn't identify homelessness as an area of concern as much as the massage parlors and Asian communities. But from what it sounds like with your young people, you are seeing that here in this area?
I am seeing them being
Human
trafficked.
trafficking, yeah.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
What I'm seeing, what I'm talking about is kids who've survived abuse as children.
Okay.
So, you
So like
know,
the
a young
propositioning.
girl who's on her third stepdad, and each one of them has molested her while mom's out working, or a young girl who basically had sex with her mom's drug addict so that her mom could get her meth. Those kinds of situations. As of today, I do not have a single client who is a victim of human trafficking. It doesn't mean we won't tomorrow, but as of today, we do not. And I know it's out there. Anybody else?
I want to thank you so much for being here. We
Absolutely.
have coffee and cookies next door. We can continue our conversation. Would you all please help me thank Denise Cortes?
Thank you. Thank you for caring.